So I wanted to show you a workflow that I put together for reaching out to sales leaders at a variety of different industries. Basically, what this is going to do, this is going to pretty much automate the entire process of writing the email, but it's going to do it based on relevancy. So the workflow that I've actually built out here is essentially pulling open jobs from Apify. In this case, SDRs. So again, this is particularly for if you're targeting like sales teams, sales leaders, and things like that. Um, Putting SDR jobs from Apify, and then we're filtering out obviously any recruitment companies, anything that's like too big, and so on and so forth. So that's kind of how we're doing it. Then once we've got it here, we're obviously finding people. We do a regular sort of I'll go through this in a second. We do a regular waterfall for finding emails. So we just use Lead Magic. We use Enrichly just because we're able to get catch-all emails by using Enrichly. Yeah, so like I said, we're using Enrichly because we're able to verify catch-alls. So we're able to actually get a sort of normally around 20 to 30% extra emails that are verified instead of using just a regular sort of validation tool. And put it through the waterfall. So then we're finding with Prospio, we select find with catch-all, like pull catch-alls. Then we verify that again with Enrichly. Then we do ICPs and then verify that again with Enrichly. And then we pull out the final valid emails. One step in this whole process that I wanted to actually show was normalizing the first name. So a lot of times when you pull data from LinkedIn, which is what we've done, or rather we pulled it from Clay. So pull it from Amplify, goes into Clay, enriches, removes any companies that we don't want to target, scores, all that kind of stuff. Then what we're doing is we're finding the people on by using Clay. But a lot of times when they pull information from, I think they use LinkedIn, but they probably use different data sources. I don't know. Someone correct me if I'm wrong. But a lot of times the first name is like a little bit weird. So what I mean is like normally they're fine, but if you scroll down here, for example, we've got like Anne Sophie, right? We don't want to have like a double-barreled name. So what I've done is I normalize the first name if there's any weird ones that have like full caps or anything like that, because a lot of times, sometimes people can have like just a weird way of sorting their name in their LinkedIn profile. So we normalize it using just Clay's inbuilt normalization thing. And then we normalize the name with a prompt using AI. So we just basically tell it to abbreviate any names that could be abbreviated. So instead of like Thomas, it's like Tom. Instead of Matthew, it's Matt. Things like that, right? So it just looks a little bit more human. So what we're trying to do is actually humanize it a little bit at a larger scale. So this isn't a massive list by any means. It's only about 215 leads after everything's been enriched, but you get the point. Then we've got all this data, we've got all this stuff, like I said here. We're also doing the same for the company name. So we normalize the company name using Clay's inbuilt normalization feature. And then we're using Claygen, just because it's got the prompt is attached to Claygen for whatever reason, to normalize it even further, so that you're not getting any weird, you know, looking company names, because we're going to be using company name as part of the copy. So the next thing that we do, and this is kind of the most important step, is we do a company analysis. So this is where I think you get the most leverage from AI, and where I think is the biggest value add or utility from AI from what I can see at the moment, in regards to building out like lead lists is normally before you'd obviously have to do a lot of this research manually, but instead here what we're doing is we're using Claude in this case to pull the information from the company description on the LinkedIn. And we're also pulling the job description as well. And we're telling it to analyze it. And then once it's analyzed it, output and answer 5 questions. So number one is, what does this company do? And it'll run you through like, this is what this company does. This is just an example here from one of them. What does this company do? And it'll tell you this, right? And we set it so that it will output number one, this is the question, and then this is the answer. And we tell it to only give a summary of, I think, maximum about like 30, 40 words or something. Number two, who does this company sell to? What industries or niche does it sell to? And it'll say the industries and niche that they sell to. What job titles does this company target? A lot of times in the company description and in the job description, it won't necessarily say like specific titles, but I tell it to essentially what is the highest likelihood of who it would target, right? And that's why it says likely sells to health and safety managers and so on and so forth. And it's pretty accurate as well. What experience skill requirements? So this is just pulling from the job description, and then what technology do we use? Because again, this makes up part of the messaging or final output in the messaging. And instead of just getting one data point, we're getting multiple different data points. And instead of just using like one trigger, which is open jobs, we're then taking that one trigger and then that's causing us to look into more information around what they actually do, who they sell to, and so on and so forth. With that, which then helps craft our messaging, do the research, and the sort of value proposition we're actually going to go in with, essentially, right? So you're not just using one trigger point, you're using that to then do more research on the company, if that makes sense, as opposed to just saying like, hey, I saw you're hiring, right? Because then everyone's going to do that. In fact, the hiring part isn't actually going to make up the majority of our message. The hiring part is actually just going to be like a very small part of the messaging. I'm not going to show the output because I not yet anyways, because we're going to run this campaign. So that's the first thing. So you don't want to do an analysis, and then we do, based on that analysis, we then ask Claude, and we're using, I think what we're using is 3.5 Sonnet, right? Which is a little bit more expensive, but it's like literally nothing. It's like a cent or something per result, or even less than that. I don't know exactly, but something tiny. And then we're basically asking it to. This is where we split up the email. We're asking it to analyze and read certain parts of this output, right? So it's now got a very structured way of reading the data. We're asking it to read that, as opposed to just asking it to, like, imagine we were, for example, just to scrape, like we had the company description, job description, and then we asked it to write the email based on that, all that text. It's usually better, in my experience, to use AI to basically analyze, summarize that main bit of data, main bit of text, then ask AI to look at the AI summary of it, if that makes sense. It just helps it with the output be a lot more readable, manageable, and more human, essentially, in that sense, even though it's not human, obviously, but you get what I mean. And then we do it a couple of times. So we ask it to just pull out one little snippet that we'll use for the email. So this is one snippet, this is another snippet. Then what we're doing is normalizing the job title, because we're going to use a section of that, or literally just normalize job title in the outreach. Again, we do this just because we've got the open job title here, which is, we don't want to reach out with like this whole text. We just want to normalize it. So it's like, hybrid BDR, etc. Then we're also using the job board name, where we found the job. So we're using Google Jobs to scrape on Apify, and Google Jobs aggregates all these different job boards. So that's why some is LinkedIn, some are like all these other different job boards, Jubal, and so on and so forth. And then we are using that as part of our messaging. And then finally, we're also using their tech stack. So whatever they mention in the job description, a lot of times, well, not a lot of times, but that's what they'll be using, right? So we asked AI to essentially pull out parts of the text, or some of the tech stack that they're using in the job description, or what they mention in the job description. So things like Salesforce, HubSpot, and so on and so forth. And again, that just gives us another data point. So it's not just one data point that we're using. We're using AI to basically build out all of these different data points so that we have very relevant messaging, and then we can tailor the messaging. So each one of these 250 messages is tailored to everyone, but this is done basically once you built it out, it's done somewhat automatically, right? You have to have scoring and mechanisms in place to filter out bad leads or bad fit leads, and obviously a little bit of quality control on this. But other than that, it basically is going to save you a massive amount of time, because if you were to do this level of research by yourself, each one of these messages would take 10, 15, 20 minutes to do, basically. But instead you build it out one time, and then you can continue adding to it, like, very simply. So yeah, that's the entire workflow. I just wanted to show you sort of like how what this looks like, how it works, and so on. But yeah, if this is something you want some help with, and you need some help with, automating parts of your research, parts of your workflow, so that your sellers or your sales team can spend more time actually doing the sales side of things, then by all means, feel free to book in a call below, or drop me a message, drop me a comment, anything, if this is on LinkedIn. Yeah, I hope you found this useful, but this is particularly useful for people that are reaching out to or targeting like sales teams, essentially. Yeah, thanks, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.